The smell of charcoal and barbecue sauce filled our backyard as I walked through the gate, carrying the potato salad I'd made that morning. I spotted my brother Tyler immediately standing near the grill with 3 guys I didn't recognize, all holding beer bottles and laughing loudly. The moment he saw me, his face lit up with that cruel smile I knew too well. "Well, well, look who finally dragged herself out of bed before sunset," Tyler announced, his voice carrying across the entire yard. "Everyone meet my deadbeat sister Danette, 28 years old and still living in Mommy and Daddy's house with no job." The laughter that erupted from Tyler's friends felt like knives cutting through my chest. I forced a smile and set the potato salad on the picnic table, my hands trembling slightly as Tyler continued his performance. "This is Marcus, Jake, and Brandon from work," Tyler said, gesturing to his audience. "Guys, I told you about my loser sister who sleeps until noon and has zero ambition." Marcus, a stocky guy with a baseball cap, chuckled and shook his head. "Man, my parents would have kicked me out years ago." "Same here," Jake added, adjusting his thick-rimmed glasses. "What do you even do all day?" Brandon, the tallest of the 3 with sandy brown hair, crossed his arms. "Let me guess you're an aspiring artist or something equally useless." Their words stung because they had no idea how wrong they were. For the past 3 years, I'd been living a carefully constructed lie. While my family believed I was unemployed and directionless, I was actually the founder and owner of Meridian Digital Solutions, a marketing company I'd started from my college dorm room. The business now employed 42 people and generated $3.8 million annually. But I had my reasons for keeping this secret. When I was 23, our father's small construction business went under during the recession. The bankruptcy devastated our family financially and emotionally. Dad fell into a deep depression, and Mom became terrified of any kind of financial risk. They both became vocal critics of entrepreneurs and business owners, calling them reckless gamblers who destroy families. When Tyler landed what he called a stable corporate job 2 years ago, he became the family's golden child. Mom and Dad constantly praised his smart career choices and responsible attitude. Meanwhile, they worried about my future, encouraging me to follow Tyler's example and find steady employment with benefits and security. So I kept working from my childhood bedroom, managing my company through late-night video conferences with international clients while my family slept. I told them I was figuring things out and exploring options. The irony was that I could afford to buy them a house twice the size of our current one, but I lived like a teenager to maintain the illusion. Actually, Tyler continued, warming up to his topic, I just got promoted to account manager at this digital marketing company called Meridian. Maybe they need someone to empty trash cans or something. My blood turned to ice. Meridian Digital Solutions, my company. Tyler worked for me and had no idea. I tried to process this information while Jake laughed and said, "Dude, your sister could be our coffee girl. We'd probably have to train her how to use the machine, though." "Wait," I managed to say, my voice barely steady. "Did you say Meridian Digital Solutions?" "Yeah, why?" Tyler looked suspicious. "Don't tell me you've heard of us. It's a pretty big deal company." I knew exactly who Tyler was because I'd seen his employee file. 6 months ago, our HR manager, Sandra, had processed an application from someone named Tyler James Morrison. I'd approved the hire without realizing James was Tyler's middle name, and that Morrison was his last name from our father's second marriage before he met our mother. On all his employee documents, he went by Tyler James. But it wasn't just Tyler. As I studied his 3 friends more carefully, recognition dawned. Marcus worked in our customer service department. Jake was one of our graphic designers. Brandon was in sales. All 3 of them were my employees. "We should probably get back to the grill," Brandon said, glancing at Tyler. "This conversation is getting depressing." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "No offense, Danette, but this is supposed to be a party." As they walked away, I heard Tyler say loud enough for me to catch, "See what I mean? She's completely clueless about the real world." I stood there holding my empty hands, trying to reconcile what I'd just learned. Not only was my brother mocking me for being unemployed, but he was doing it alongside 3 other people who worked for the company I built from nothing. They had no idea that their paychecks came from the person they were treating like garbage. The afternoon sun felt suddenly oppressive as I walked toward the house, needing space to think. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about discovering that the people I employed, the ones whose livelihoods depended on my business decisions, thought it was acceptable to mock and belittle someone they believed was struggling. But there was something else gnawing at me. Tyler had said he got promoted to account manager, but I knew our organizational chart by heart. We didn't have any account managers named Tyler James, and we certainly hadn't promoted anyone to that position recently. I pulled out my phone and quickly accessed our company directory through the secure app. Tyler James Morrison was listed as a junior associate in our client relations department, not an account manager. He'd been lying to our family about his position, just like I'd been lying about having a job at all. The difference was, I was lying to protect my family from their fears about entrepreneurship. Tyler was lying to make himself look more important than he actually was. As I reached the back door, I could hear him still talking to his friends by the grill. Honestly, I feel bad for her sometimes, but you can't help people who won't help themselves. I paused with my hand on the door handle, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Tyler had no idea what kind of power dynamic he'd just revealed, but I wasn't ready to show my cards yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the barbecue incident. I decided to do some investigating into Tyler and his friends' employment records. What I found made my stomach turn. Tyler's file showed a pattern of disciplinary issues that I'd somehow missed during my busy schedule. He'd been written up 3 times for excessive tardiness, twice for unprofessional behavior toward colleagues, and once for missing a client deadline that cost us a small account. His supervisor, Janet, had noted concerns about his attitude and work ethic in her monthly reports. Marcus from customer service had an even worse record. We'd received 4 formal complaints from clients about his rudeness during support calls. One client specifically mentioned feeling disrespected and patronized during a technical support session. His call monitoring scores were consistently below department standards. Jake's graphic design portfolio looked impressive on paper, but a deeper dive revealed troubling patterns. 2 weeks ago, our creative director had discovered that Jake had submitted a logo design that was nearly identical to work done by another agency 3 years prior. When confronted, Jake claimed it was coincidental, but the similarities were too striking to ignore. Brandon's sales numbers told their own story. Despite bragging at the barbecue about working for a successful company, he hadn't hit his quarterly targets in 4 months. His client retention rate was the lowest on his team, and several potential deals had fallen through due to what his manager described as over-promising and under-delivering. These weren't just random employees having bad months. These were people whose poor performance was actively hurting my business, and they felt entitled to mock someone they believed was unemployed and struggling. The situation at home was getting worse, too. That evening at dinner, Mom brought up the barbecue conversation. "Tyler's friends seem lovely," she said, passing the mashed potatoes. "They all have such good jobs. Tyler mentioned they might be able to give you some advice about finding work." Dad nodded enthusiastically. "That boy of ours really turned his life around. Remember when he was struggling after college? Now look at him promoted already and bringing home good friends. Maybe you should ask Tyler to put in a good word for you at his company," Mom suggested, looking at me with hopeful eyes. "He said they might have entry-level positions available." I nearly choked on my water. Tyler was talking about getting me an entry-level job at my own company. "I don't think that's necessary," I said carefully. "Danette, honey, you can't be picky at this point." Dad said, his tone gentle but firm. "You're 28 years old. Tyler is younger than you, and he's already established himself professionally." "Your father's right," Mom agreed. "Pride won't pay the bills forever. We won't be able to support you indefinitely." The irony was suffocating. My parents were worried about supporting me financially while I had enough money saved to support them for the rest of their lives. But I'd created this situation by hiding my success and now I was trapped in it. Later that night, I received a text from Tyler that made everything worse. Added you to a family group chat. Thought everyone should stay updated on your job search progress. The group chat was called Deadbeat Danette Updates and included our parents, our Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, and our cousins Amy and David. Tyler had already posted several memes about unemployment and laziness with crying, laughing emojis and comments like, "Too real," and "This is literally my sister." I stared at my phone screen watching family members react with laughing emojis to content that was specifically designed to humiliate me. My own brother had turned my unemployment into entertainment for our entire extended family. But Tyler wasn't done. The next morning, I discovered something that crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I was conducting my regular review of company computer usage reports when I noticed unusual activity on Tyler's workstation. During business hours, he'd been accessing meme creation websites and social media platforms. When I dug deeper, I found that he'd been using company resources and time to create the humiliating content he was sharing about me. One meme showed a cartoon character lying in bed with the caption, "When you're 28 and still live with your parents because you're too lazy to get a job." He'd created it using company software and uploaded it during a time when he should have been working on client projects. Another showed a graph labeled "My Sister's Productivity Levels," with a line that stayed flat at 0. The timestamp showed he'd made it during a team meeting he was supposed to be attending. Tyler wasn't just mocking me in his personal time, he was stealing company resources to do it, which meant he was technically stealing from me to fund his campaign of harassment against me. The final straw came when I received a call from Janet, Tyler's supervisor. "Danette, I need to discuss Tyler Morrison with you," she said during our weekly management check-in. "I know you prefer to handle personnel issues through department heads, but this situation is getting unusual." "What kind of situation?" "He's been telling other employees that his sister is unemployed and lazy, and he's been encouraging them to share stories about family members who won't work. It's creating a negative atmosphere in the department. Yesterday, he spent 20 minutes during lunch break showing colleagues memes about unemployment." My hands clenched around the phone. "Has this affected his work performance?" That's what I wanted to discuss. His attitude has been declining steadily, and I think his personal frustrations might be carrying over into his professional responsibilities. He missed another client deadline yesterday, and when I addressed it, he said something about how people in his family don't understand the value of hard work. "I see. I wanted your guidance on how to handle this. Normally, I'd write him up again, but he's already on thin ice. Another disciplinary action might mean termination." I thanked Janet and told her I'd get back to her with direction on how to proceed. After hanging up, I sat in my home office feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Tyler wasn't just bad-mouthing me to our family. He was using my own workplace as a platform to spread negativity about unemployment and work ethic, creating a hostile environment for any colleagues who might actually be struggling. That evening, Tyler announced his next plan during dinner. "I've decided to bring Marcus, Jake, and Brandon to the family reunion next month," he said, cutting into his steak with obvious satisfaction. "They want to meet more of the family, and I think it would be good for everyone to see what successful young adults look like." Mom clapped her hands together. "That's wonderful. It'll be so nice to have positive role models around." Plus, Tyler continued looking directly at me, "maybe seeing examples of people who've made something of themselves will inspire certain family members to get motivated." Dad raised his glass. "To Tyler for bringing success and good friends into this family." As they toasted Tyler's achievement, I realized he was planning to humiliate me in front of our entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, everyone would witness Tyler's friends joining in to mock the family disappointment. But Tyler had no idea what he was actually planning. He was going to bring 3 of my employees to a family gathering where they would mock their own boss. The reunion was shaping up to be the perfect opportunity for me to reveal the truth. I just wasn't sure I was ready for the explosion that would follow. The weeks following Tyler's announcement about the family reunion brought a new level of torment. Every day seemed to bring fresh humiliation as my family's disappointment in me grew stronger. Mom started leaving job listings from the newspaper on my nightstand with helpful notes like, "This one doesn't require experience," and "They're hiring immediately." Dad began making pointed comments about adults who contribute to household expenses. The worst part was seeing the genuine worry in their eyes. They truly believed I was wasting my life, and their concern was making them desperate. The family history that had created this situation ran deeper than just Dad's failed business. Our grandfather had lost everything in the 1970s when his restaurant chain collapsed, leaving our grandmother to raise 4 children in poverty. Dad had grown up wearing secondhand clothes and eating government cheese, watching his mother work 3 jobs to keep their apartment. When Dad finally achieved stability with his construction business, it represented everything he dreamed of: steady income, respect in the community, and the ability to provide for his family. The bankruptcy hadn't just cost him money, it had triggered generational trauma about financial risk and the dangers of entrepreneurship. Mom's fear was different but equally deep. Her father had been a compulsive gambler who called his betting investments and business opportunities. She'd watched her mother lose their house twice before her parents divorced when she was 12. To Mom, anyone who took financial risks was potentially dangerous to their family's security. So when Tyler landed his corporate job, he became proof that their values were correct. Safe, predictable employment was the path to happiness. Risk-taking was selfish and destructive. In their minds, Tyler represented everything they wanted their children to be. Meanwhile, I represented everything they feared. The cruel irony was that I'd built exactly the kind of success they claimed to want for me. Meridian Digital Solutions wasn't just profitable, it was stable. We had long-term contracts with major corporations, a healthy cash flow, and enough reserves to weather economic downturns. I'd created the financial security they'd always dreamed of, but I'd done it through the methods they'd been taught to fear. Tyler's behavior at home was escalating beyond the group chat memes. He started bringing Marcus, Jake, and Brandon over to the house during the day, timing their visits for when I'd be in my pajamas working late-night client calls. They'd arrive around noon, acting surprised to find me still in sleepwear, making comments about keeping normal hours and joining the real world. What they didn't understand was that my biggest clients were based in Australia and New Zealand. When they saw me sleeping until noon, I'd actually been working until 4 in the morning, coordinating product launches and strategic campaigns across multiple time zones. But explaining my schedule would mean revealing my secret, so I endured their judgment in silence. "This is embarrassing," Tyler said one Tuesday afternoon, finding me in the kitchen making coffee while wearing my robe. Marcus, Jake, and Brandon stood behind him, shaking their heads in mock disappointment. "It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon," Jake said, adjusting his glasses with theatrical disbelief. "Do you even own actual clothes?" Brandon asked, crossing his arms. "Maybe we should stage an intervention," Marcus suggested with a smirk. "This is getting really sad." I wanted to tell them I'd been working for 6 straight hours and had generated more revenue that morning than the 3 of them would produce all week combined. Instead, I poured my coffee and returned to my room, listening to them laugh as they settled into the living room to watch television on their lunch break. The stress was beginning to affect my work performance in ways that terrified me. During a crucial video conference with our largest client, a luxury hotel chain, considering a $2 million marketing contract, I broke down crying when the CEO asked about our company's stability and leadership structure. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping my eyes while 20 executives watched through the camera. "I'm dealing with some personal challenges, but they won't affect our service quality." The CEO, a professional woman named Patricia, who reminded me of my mother, looked concerned. "Danette, we've worked together for 2 years. I've never seen you anything but completely composed. Are you sure everything's all right?" I wanted to explain that my family thought I was a failure, that my brother was sabotaging my emotional health while working for my company, and that the pressure of living a lie was destroying my confidence. Instead, I forced a smile and assured her everything was fine. But Patricia wasn't convinced. After the meeting, she called me privately. "I need to be honest," she said. "The board is concerned about what they saw today. We're about to invest $2 million in a marketing campaign, and we need to know our agency partner is emotionally and professionally stable. I'm going to recommend we postpone signing the contract until we can reassess the situation. Losing that contract would mean laying off staff and potentially losing other clients who might worry about our stability. Tyler's emotional abuse was threatening the livelihood of 42 people who depended on me for their paychecks. That evening, my parents cornered me in the living room with Tyler and his 3 friends present. "We need to talk," Dad said, sitting down across from me with the serious expression he'd used when I was in trouble as a child. "Your mother and I have been discussing your situation, and we think it's time for some tough love." Mom sat beside him, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Honey, you're almost 30 years old. This can't continue." Tyler leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, looking satisfied. Marcus, Jake, and Brandon sat on the couch like they were attending a show. "We've decided to give you 60 days to find employment," Dad continued. "If you can't manage that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. We love you, but we can't enable this behavior anymore." "Maybe Tyler can help," Mom suggested, glancing hopefully at her golden child. "He said his company might have openings." Tyler straightened up, enjoying his moment of importance. "Actually, I talked to my supervisor about you. She said they might consider you for an entry-level assistant position if you can prove you're willing to work hard." I stared at him, realizing he was talking about Janet, his supervisor, who reported directly to me. Tyler was claiming he had enough influence at my company to get his sister hired as a low-level assistant. "The starting salary isn't much," Tyler continued, "but it's better than nothing. You'd basically be doing filing, making copies, answering phones. Simple stuff that even someone with no experience could handle." Marcus chimed in, "Yeah, they need people who can follow basic instructions and show up on time." "The dress code is pretty strict, though," Jake added. "You'd have to wear actual clothes every day." Brandon nodded sagely. "Professional environment. No pajamas allowed." They were describing entry-level positions at my own company, explaining that I might be qualified to work as the most junior employee at the business I'd built from nothing. "What do you think?" Mom asked, looking at me with desperate hope. "Would you be willing to try?" Before I could answer, Tyler's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. "Actually, this is perfect timing," he said. "My supervisor just texted. She wants to know if you're serious about interviewing. I told her you were family, so she's willing to give you a chance despite your lack of experience." He was talking about Janet, who had no idea she was discussing hiring her own CEO's sister for an entry-level position at the CEO's own company. "She said she could meet with you next week if you're interested," Tyler continued. "But you'd have to come in dressed professionally and be prepared to explain why you've been unemployed for so long." I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me. My parents desperate to see me succeed. Tyler basking in his role as my potential savior. His 3 friends nodding approvingly at Tyler's generosity in helping his loser sister. None of them knew they were planning to have me interviewed for a job at my own company by a woman who sent me monthly reports and asked for my approval on major departmental decisions. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. "Don't think too long," Tyler warned. "Good opportunities don't wait around forever." As I went to bed that night, I realized the situation had moved beyond emotional manipulation. Tyler was now actively interfering with my business operations by involving Janet in his scheme to get me hired. He was creating workplace complications that could affect my professional relationships with my own employees. But there was something else bothering me, something I needed to investigate. Tyler kept talking about his influence at the company and his communication with his supervisor. I decided to review his recent work activity more closely. What I found made my blood run cold. Tyler had been accessing our client database without authorization, looking up information about accounts he wasn't assigned to work on. He'd also been copying confidential company documents to his personal email address, including financial reports and organizational charts that were supposed to be restricted to senior management. I pulled his complete digital activity record and discovered a pattern of information theft that had been going on for weeks. Tyler wasn't just a problematic employee, he was potentially stealing company secrets. But the worst discovery was yet to come. In his recent email activity, I found messages to external addresses that didn't belong to clients or approved vendors. Tyler had been sharing internal company information with people outside our organization, including financial data and client lists that could be valuable to our competitors. I traced the recipient addresses and felt my stomach drop. One of them belonged to a rival marketing agency that had been trying to steal our clients for months. Tyler wasn't just mocking me and lying to our family. He was committing corporate espionage against my company while planning to get me hired as his subordinate. The family reunion was still 2 weeks away, but I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to end this before Tyler's actions destroyed everything I'd worked to build. The intervention my parents had planned became the catalyst for everything that followed. They scheduled it for the same day I needed to handle our biggest client presentation of the year, a $3 million account that would determine whether we could expand our international operations. I'd been preparing for weeks, coordinating with team members across 4 time zones to create a comprehensive marketing strategy for a technology company's global product launch. The presentation was set for 2 p.m. with executives from Tokyo, London, and Sydney joining the video conference. But at exactly 1:30, just as I was reviewing my final notes, Tyler knocked on my bedroom door. "Family meeting in the living room," he announced. "Everyone's here." I tried to explain that I had an important video call, but Tyler rolled his eyes. "See, this is exactly what we need to address," he said. "You're always claiming to be busy with imaginary responsibilities. It's time to face reality." When I entered the living room, I found my parents, Tyler, Marcus, Jake, and Brandon arranged in a semicircle, like they were conducting a formal hearing. Tyler had positioned his phone on the coffee table, recording everything. "We're going live on social media," he explained with a grin. "I think people need to see what enabling looks like. Maybe some public accountability will finally motivate you." Mom looked uncomfortable with the recording but didn't object. Dad seemed resigned to whatever Tyler had planned. "Before we start," I said, checking the time on my phone, "I really need to take this call at 2. It's extremely important." "Nothing is more important than getting your life together," Tyler responded. "Besides, what call could you possibly have? You don't have a job." Marcus, Jake, and Brandon nodded in agreement. They were sitting in my living room preparing to participate in an intervention about my unemployment while they were supposed to be working at the company I owned. "Danette." Dad began reading from notes Tyler had prepared. "We love you, but your behavior is affecting the entire family. You're 28 years old with no job, no direction, and no apparent motivation to change." "We've tried being patient," Mom added, her voice shaking slightly. "But patience without accountability isn't helping anyone." Tyler took over, clearly enjoying his role as the family spokesperson. "I've talked to my friends here about what successful people do differently. They work hard, show up on time, dress professionally, and contribute to their workplaces and families." "That's right," Marcus agreed. "Successful people don't make excuses. They take responsibility." "They also don't sleep until noon and wear pajamas all day," Jake added, adjusting his glasses importantly. Brandon nodded. "Success is about showing up consistently, even when you don't feel like it." I watched these 3 men who worked for me and whose paychecks I signed, explaining to my family what successful people do differently. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. "I've arranged for you to interview at my company next Monday," Tyler announced to the camera. "Meridian Digital Solutions is willing to consider you for an entry-level position despite your complete lack of work experience." "That's incredibly generous," Mom said, looking at Tyler with pride. "It really is," Dad agreed. "Tyler's putting his own reputation on the line to help you." At exactly 2:00, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia's name, the CEO of the hotel chain. I had to take this call or risk losing a $3 million contract. "I need to answer this," I said, standing up. "Absolutely not," Tyler said firmly. Sit back down. This is more important than whatever game you're playing. Tyler, this isn't a game. This is actually urgent. Everything's urgent when you're trying to avoid responsibility, he replied, gesturing to his phone camera. See what I mean? She's always got some excuse. The phone stopped ringing. My biggest client presentation had just been missed because my brother was live streaming an intervention about my unemployment. I sat back down feeling numb. Tyler had just cost me $3 million and potentially destroyed a 2-year business relationship, and he thought he was helping me by offering me an entry-level job at my own company. Now that we have your attention, Tyler continued, let's talk about what needs to change. First, you need to accept that your current lifestyle is unacceptable. For the next 20 minutes, Tyler and his friends took turns explaining everything wrong with my life while broadcasting it to the internet. They discussed my sleeping habits, my lack of professional clothes, my apparent inability to maintain employment, and my negative impact on family dynamics. The worst part, Tyler said near the end, is that she doesn't seem grateful for the opportunities we're offering. I'm literally trying to get her a job at my company, and she's acting like it's an inconvenience. Some people just don't want to be helped, Marcus observed. You can't help someone who won't help themselves, Jake agreed. Brandon nodded thoughtfully. It's like they're addicted to failure. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Concerned that we couldn't connect for today's presentation. Please call at your earliest convenience to reschedule. The board is reconsidering our timeline. Another text followed immediately. Our legal team is also requesting clarification about your company's current management structure before we proceed. Tyler had just triggered a crisis that could destroy my business. Patricia's company wasn't just reconsidering the timeline, they were questioning whether my company was stable enough to handle their account. If word spread that our CEO had missed a major presentation, without explanation, other clients would start wondering about our reliability. Are you even listening? Tyler demanded, noticing that I was reading my phone. I'm sorry, I said, looking up. I was just checking something important. More important than your family? Mom asked, hurt evident in her voice. Nothing should be more important than fixing your life, Dad added. Tyler turned to the camera with exaggerated frustration. This is exactly what we're dealing with. Even during an intervention designed to help her, she's distracted by her phone, probably scrolling through social media instead of paying attention to people who care about her. The comments on his live stream were beginning to pile up. I could see the screen from my angle, and people were writing things like, tough love is sometimes necessary, and she needs a reality check, and some people need to hit rock bottom first. I think we need to be more direct, Tyler announced. Danette, if you don't accept the job interview I've arranged and start taking steps to improve your life, Mom and Dad are prepared to ask you to move out. We don't want to, Mom said quickly, but we can't enable this behavior anymore. Dad nodded reluctantly. You'll always be our daughter, but you can't live here forever without contributing. Tyler smiled at the camera. Sometimes families have to make hard decisions for everyone's benefit. My phone rang again. This time it was Janet, Tyler's supervisor, calling about the interview Tyler had arranged. I couldn't answer without revealing the truth, but ignoring the call would make the situation even worse. Another mysterious phone call, Tyler observed sarcastically. Let me guess, it's about a job opportunity you're too good for. Actually, I said, standing up slowly, it's about the interview you arranged. Tyler's face lit up. Really, they're calling you directly. That's great news. He gestured excitedly to the camera. See, when you put yourself out there and ask for help, good things happen. This is probably my supervisor calling to set up the interview. Marcus, Jake, and Brandon looked pleased with themselves, like they'd personally contributed to this positive development. Answer it, Tyler encouraged. Put it on speaker so everyone can hear what real professional communication sounds like. I stared at him, realizing he had no idea what he was asking. Tyler wanted me to put Janet on speakerphone during a live stream so everyone could hear his supervisor discussing hiring arrangements for his unemployed sister. But Tyler didn't know that Janet was calling to ask me, her boss, why my brother thought he could arrange job interviews for external candidates without going through proper hiring procedures. "I don't think that's appropriate," I said. "Of course you don't," Tyler sighed. "Even when opportunity knocks, you find a way to sabotage it." The phone stopped ringing. I'd now missed calls from my biggest client and my own employee, both because my brother was live streaming an intervention about my unemployment to hundreds of strangers on the internet. "This intervention is over," Tyler announced to the camera. "I've done everything I can to help my sister, but she has to want to change. Sometimes you have to let people fail before they're ready to succeed." He ended the live stream and looked at me with what appeared to be genuine disappointment. "I really thought today might be a turning point for you," he said, "but you're not ready to accept help." As everyone filed out of the living room, I sat alone with my phone, staring at the missed calls that represented everything I was about to lose. Tyler's intervention had potentially cost me $3 million, damaged my relationship with my biggest client, confused my employee management structure, and broadcast my humiliation to hundreds of people online. But something else was happening. The anger that had been building for weeks was finally overtaking the hurt and confusion. Tyler had crossed lines I didn't even know existed, and he'd done it while claiming to help me. I opened my laptop and began pulling Tyler's complete employment file. If he wanted to involve my business in his campaign to humiliate me, then it was time to show him exactly what kind of business he'd been playing games with. The family reunion was still a week away, but Tyler had just accelerated our timeline. He'd forced my hand by making our private family dysfunction into public entertainment and by interfering directly with my professional responsibilities. It was time to end this charade, but I was going to do it on my terms, in my time, and with complete control over the narrative. Tyler thought he'd won. He had no idea that his victory celebration was about to become his resignation speech. 3 days after the disastrous intervention, Tyler announced that he'd moved the family reunion celebration to our house. He wanted to host it himself, he said, so he could properly introduce his work friends to the extended family and celebrate his recent success. "It'll be perfect," he told our parents over breakfast. "Everyone can see how well I'm doing professionally, and maybe Danette will finally be motivated by seeing what success looks like." Mom and Dad agreed enthusiastically. They were proud of Tyler and wanted to show him off to relatives who remembered him as the unfocused younger sibling who'd struggled to find direction after college. I spent those 3 days carefully documenting everything I'd discovered about Tyler Marcus Jake and Brandon's employment violations. The evidence was overwhelming: timesheet fraud, unauthorized access to confidential data, poor performance reviews, customer complaints, and in Tyler's case, corporate espionage. But I also spent time preparing for the conversation I'd need to have with my family afterward. Revealing the truth wouldn't just expose Tyler's lies, it would force me to explain why I'd hidden my success for 3 years. I needed to be ready for their hurt, confusion, and potential anger about my deception. The morning of the reunion, Tyler was in full performance mode. He'd bought a new shirt and spent 20 minutes styling his hair. Marcus, Jake, and Brandon arrived early to help set up, acting like they were hosting the event themselves. "I'm so excited for everyone to meet you guys," Tyler said as they arranged chairs in the backyard. "My family's going to be so impressed." "We're happy to help," Marcus replied, adjusting the tablecloth on the picnic table. "It's nice that your family cares enough to celebrate your success." "Not everyone has family support," Jake added, glancing meaningfully in my direction. "Some people are lucky to have relatives who believe in them." Brandon nodded. "It makes a big difference when family members encourage each other instead of being negative influences." I watched them prepare to present themselves as Tyler's successful colleagues to my extended family, knowing they had no idea they were about to meet their boss. Relatives began arriving around noon. Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert brought their twins, Amy and David, both recent college graduates who'd been following Tyler's career journey with interest. Grandma Morrison came with her sister Eleanor, both excited to see how their grandchildren were progressing in life. Cousin Michael drove down from Portland with his wife Jennifer and their 2 young children. Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia brought their teenage son Connor, who was considering different career paths and wanted to hear Tyler's advice about entering the business world. By 1 o'clock, 23 family members had gathered in our backyard, creating the perfect audience for Tyler's planned presentation. "Everyone," Tyler called out, standing near the grill with Marcus, Jake, and Brandon flanking him like backup singers. "I want to introduce you to my colleagues from Meridian Digital Solutions." The family gathered around as Tyler gestured proudly to his friends. "This is Marcus from customer service, Jake from graphic design, and Brandon from sales," he announced. "We all work together at one of the most successful marketing companies in the region." Aunt Susan clapped her hands. "How wonderful, Tyler, you've really surrounded yourself with achievers. It's impressive that you're all so young and already established in your careers," Uncle Robert added. Grandma Morrison beamed at the group. "In my day, young people didn't have these kinds of opportunities. You should be very proud." Tyler basked in the attention, then shifted into the next phase of his presentation. "I also wanted to update everyone on Danette's situation," he said, his tone becoming more serious. "As you know, she's been struggling to find direction in her life." I felt every eye in the backyard turn toward me. Some faces showed sympathy, others concern, and a few displayed the kind of polite discomfort that comes from witnessing family drama. "But I have good news," Tyler continued. "I've been able to arrange a job interview for her at our company. It would be entry-level work, but everyone has to start somewhere." "That's very generous of you," Cousin Michael said approvingly. "Family should help family," Uncle Frank agreed. Tyler smiled modestly. "I just believe in giving people opportunities. Danette has potential, she just needs guidance and structure." Marcus stepped forward to support Tyler's narrative. "We're always looking for people who are willing to learn and work hard. The company has excellent training programs," Jake added. "Even people with no experience can succeed if they're committed." Brandon nodded. "What matters most is attitude. Skills can be taught, but work ethic has to come from within." Aunt Patricia looked at me with encouraging eyes. "This sounds like exactly what you need, dear. A chance to prove yourself with people who believe in you." I could feel the weight of their expectations and good intentions pressing down on me. They genuinely wanted to see me succeed, and they were grateful to Tyler for creating what they believed was a path to my salvation. "Tyler," I said quietly, "can you tell everyone a little more about the company structure? I'd like to understand exactly where this opportunity fits." Tyler straightened up, pleased to have my attention and cooperation. "Absolutely," he said. "Meridian Digital Solutions is a full-service marketing agency. We have different departments handling everything from customer service to creative design to sales and account management." "And where do you fit in that structure?" I asked. "I'm an account manager," Tyler said confidently. "I work directly with clients to develop marketing strategies and ensure their campaigns succeed." I felt a flutter of anticipation in my chest. Tyler was lying to our entire family about his position at my company. "That sounds like significant responsibility," Grandma Morrison observed. "Account management must require a lot of experience." "It does," Tyler agreed. "But I've proven myself reliable and professional, so they've given me increased authority and autonomy." Marcus, Jake, and Brandon nodded along, supporting Tyler's version of his professional status. "What about your supervisor?" I asked. "Who do you report to?" "Her name is Janet," Tyler said. "She's the department head for client relations. Great boss, very supportive of my career development." "And who does Janet report to?" I continued. Tyler paused, looking slightly uncertain. "I think she reports to someone in upper management, the company owner or president or something." "You think?" I pressed gently. "Well, I don't interact with senior leadership directly," Tyler said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "That's above my level." "But you just said you have significant authority and autonomy," I pointed out. Tyler's confidence wavered slightly. "I do within my department. I mean, I work independently on client accounts, but I still have to follow company policies. I could see family members beginning to notice the inconsistencies in Tyler's explanations. He was describing himself as both an autonomous account manager and a mid-level employee who didn't know basic information about his company's leadership structure. Tyler, I said, keeping my voice calm and curious. Since you've been so helpful in arranging this interview opportunity, I think it would be valuable for everyone to understand more about Meridian Digital Solutions. Can you tell us about the company's founding and ownership? Tyler looked genuinely stumped. I don't really know the details about that stuff. It's just a successful company that's been growing steadily. How long has it been in business? I asked. I'm not sure exactly. A few years, I think. Who founded it? Some entrepreneur probably. Look, Danette, I don't see why these details matter for an entry-level position. The family was watching this exchange with growing interest. Tyler, who'd been confidently describing his professional success, couldn't answer basic questions about the company he claimed to understand thoroughly. They matter, I said quietly, because I'd like to know more about the organization before I interview there. You're overthinking this, Marcus interjected, trying to help Tyler. Most employees don't know detailed company history. We just focus on doing our jobs well. That's true, Jake agreed. The important thing is that it's a stable company with good growth potential. Brandon nodded. What matters is the opportunity, not the background information. But I wasn't finished. Tyler, you mentioned that you have influence in the hiring process. How exactly does that work? Tyler's face flushed slightly. I talked to Janet about you. I explained your situation and asked if she'd be willing to give you a chance. And she agreed to interview me based on your recommendation. Yes, because she trusts my judgment about people. So you're saying that Janet, your supervisor, values your opinion enough to consider hiring your sister for a position at the company? That's right, Tyler said, his confidence returning. She knows I understand what kind of people succeed in our workplace. I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Tyler had just claimed that Janet, who reported directly to me, valued his judgment so highly that she'd hire his sister based solely on his recommendation. That's quite a testament to your standing in the company, I said. It is, Tyler agreed proudly. I've worked hard to build that kind of professional reputation. The family murmured approvingly. Here was evidence that Tyler wasn't just successful, he was respected and influential enough to help his struggling sister. Tyler, I said, reaching into my purse for the folder I'd prepared. Since you've been so generous with your time and influence, I'd like to share something with everyone. What kind of something? Tyler asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. Information about Meridian Digital Solutions, I said, including details about the company's founding ownership and organizational structure. Tyler looked confused. Where did you get information about my company? From the person who founded it, I said, opening the folder to reveal incorporation documents, tax returns, and organizational charts. What are you talking about? Tyler asked. I looked around at my family members, all watching expectantly, then back at Tyler and his 3 friends who were about to learn they'd been mocking their boss for months. Tyler, I said clearly, I am the founder, owner, and chief executive officer of Meridian Digital Solutions. You don't work for some anonymous entrepreneur. You work for me. The silence that followed my revelation lasted exactly 7 seconds. I counted them as I watched 23 family members and 4 employees process what they'd just heard. Tyler's face went through a rapid sequence of expressions: confusion, disbelief, panic, and finally a desperate attempt to salvage the situation through denial. That's impossible, he said, his voice cracking slightly. You don't have a job. You've never had a job. This is some kind of sick joke. I pulled out my business incorporation documents signed and notarized 3 years earlier, showing my name as the founding member and CEO of Meridian Digital Solutions, LLC. These are official state documents, I said, handing them to Dad, filed with the Secretary of State's office when I was 25 years old. Dad took the papers with shaking hands, studying them carefully. His background in construction had taught him to read legal documents, and I watched his face change as he absorbed the information. Danette Rose Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. He read aloud. Date of incorporation, September 15th, 3 years ago. Mom moved to look over his shoulder, her eyes widening as she saw my name and signature on official government paperwork. Tyler snatched the documents from Dad's hands, scanning them frantically. "This is fake," he declared. "These are probably printed from some website that makes joke certificates." I handed Aunt Susan my most recent tax return, showing Meridian Digital Solutions revenue of $3.8 million, with my name listed as the primary shareholder. "These are real IRS documents," I said, "filed 4 months ago." Uncle Robert, who worked as an accountant, took the tax return and examined it professionally. "These are legitimate," he confirmed. "This shows substantial business income reported under Danette's Social Security number." Marcus, Jake, and Brandon stood frozen beside Tyler, slowly realizing what my revelation meant for their own situations. "Wait," Marcus said weakly. "If you own the company, then you know about your customer service complaints," I finished. "Yes, I know about all 4 formal complaints filed against you for rudeness and unprofessional behavior." Jake pushed his glasses up nervously. "And the design thing? You mean your plagiarism of another agency's logo design 2 weeks ago?" I asked. "Yes, Jake, I know about that too." Brandon's face had gone completely pale. "The sales numbers—" 4 months without hitting targets," I confirmed. "Your client retention rate is the lowest on your team." Tyler was still clutching my incorporation documents, his mind struggling to reconcile his reality with the evidence in his hands. "But you live here," he said desperately. "You sleep until noon, you wear pajamas, you don't go to an office." "I work from home," I explained patiently. "Those late mornings you've been mocking, I'm usually finishing video conferences with clients in Australia and New Zealand that run until 3 or 4 in the morning." Grandma Morrison spoke up from her chair. "Danette, honey, why didn't you tell us you had a successful business?" I took a deep breath, looking around at my family's confused and hurt faces. "Because when Dad's construction business failed, this family developed a deep fear of entrepreneurship," I said. "You praised Tyler for getting a safe corporate job and constantly warned me about the dangers of taking financial risks. I was afraid that telling you I'd started a company would disappoint you or make you worry about me making the same mistakes that hurt our family before." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "So you've been pretending to be unemployed to protect our feelings?" "I've been living like I was unemployed to avoid triggering your fears about business ownership," I clarified. "But yes, essentially." Dad set the tax return down carefully. $3.8 million in revenue. "Last year," I confirmed, "we're projected to hit $5.2 million this year." "And Tyler works for you?" Aunt Susan asked, still processing. "Tyler, Marcus, Jake, and Brandon all work for me," I said. "Tyler applied 6 months ago under the name Tyler James Morrison instead of Tyler Morrison, so I didn't initially realize he was my brother." Tyler finally found his voice again. "But I never saw you at the office. I never heard anyone mention a CEO named Danette." "I work remotely most of the time and use my middle name professionally," I explained. "To your co-workers, I'm D. Rose Morrison. Also, you're a junior associate in client relations. You wouldn't typically interact with senior leadership." "Junior associate," Tyler repeated weakly. "But I told everyone I was an account manager." "We don't have account managers in your department," I said gently. "You've been lying to our family about your position, just like I've been lying about having no position at all." Uncle Frank leaned forward. "What about his promotion? He said he was recently promoted." "Tyler hasn't been promoted," I said. "In fact, he's been written up multiple times for tardiness, unprofessional behavior, and missing client deadlines." The weight of humiliation was settling over Tyler like a heavy blanket. Not only had he been caught lying about his job title, but his poor performance was being exposed in front of our entire family. But the worst discovery, I continued, was finding out that Tyler has been using company time and resources to create memes mocking me for being unemployed. I pulled out printed screenshots of Tyler's computer activity, showing timestamps when he'd accessed meme creation websites during business hours. He's been stealing company time to produce content designed to humiliate his own boss, I said. Tyler's face went from pale to bright red. I didn't know you were my boss. That's irrelevant, I replied. You were using company resources to mock your sister's unemployment while being paid to work on client projects. Cousin Michael whistled low. Dude, that's really messed up. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out the final set of documents, the ones that would end Tyler's employment permanently. More seriously, Tyler has been accessing confidential company data without authorization and sharing proprietary information with external parties, including our competitors. The backyard went completely silent. That's corporate espionage, Uncle Robert said quietly. Yes, it is, I confirmed. Tyler has been stealing client lists, financial reports, and strategic planning documents. I found emails where he shared this information with a rival agency. Tyler started to protest, but I held up my hand. I have complete digital records of your computer activity, Tyler. Every file you accessed, every email you sent, every website you visited during company time. The evidence is overwhelming. Dad stood up slowly, his face showing a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Son, he said quietly, is this true? Tyler looked around the backyard at all the faces staring back at him. Family members who'd been celebrating his success 10 minutes earlier were now seeing evidence of his professional misconduct and personal cruelty. I can explain, Tyler said desperately. Please do, I said. But Tyler had no explanation that could justify corporate theft or the months of emotional abuse he'd inflicted, while claiming to help me find employment at the company I'd built myself. Tyler Morrison, I said formally, your employment with Meridian Digital Solutions is terminated effective immediately. Marcus Williams, Jake Thompson, and Brandon Davis, your employment is also terminated for performance issues and violation of company policies. The four of them stood there looking stunned like they couldn't believe their actions had consequences. You can't fire us, Marcus protested. This isn't even a real workplace meeting. I'm the CEO of your company, I replied calmly. I can terminate your employment wherever and whenever I choose, as long as I follow proper legal procedures, which I am. We'll fight this, Jake said, his voice shaking. With what grounds, I asked. I have documented evidence of performance issues, policy violations, and in Tyler's case, criminal activity. Your dismissals are completely justified. Brandon was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're really the owner of Meridian, I'm really the owner of Meridian. Tyler sank into a nearby chair, the full reality of his situation finally hitting him. I've been mocking my own boss for months, he said quietly. While stealing from her company, Dad added, his voice heavy with disappointment. And convincing our family to stage interventions about her work ethic, Mom said, wiping away tears. And offering to get her hired as an entry-level employee at her own business, Aunt Susan added, shaking her head. Tyler looked up at me with genuine desperation in his eyes. Danette, I'm sorry, I didn't know. If I had known you owned the company, I never would have... Would have what? I interrupted. Treated me with basic human respect, only been decent to me if you knew I had power over your employment. Tyler didn't have an answer for that. The problem isn't that you didn't know I was your boss, I continued. The problem is that you thought it was acceptable to mock and humiliate someone you believed was struggling. You turned my unemployment into entertainment-created group chats to share memes about my failures and brought your friends to witness my humiliation. I looked at Marcus, Jake, and Brandon, who were avoiding eye contact. And you three joined in, willingly making cruel jokes about someone you'd never met just because you thought you were better than me." Grandma Morrison spoke up from her chair, her voice carrying the authority of her 86 years. "Tyler," she said, "I've watched this family for decades through good times and bad times. What you've done to your sister is unforgivable." "But Grandma, I was trying to help her," Tyler protested weakly. "No," Grandma Morrison said firmly. "You were trying to make yourself feel superior by making her feel small. There's a difference between helping and humiliating, and you chose humiliation." The family gathering had become Tyler's public reckoning, witnessed by everyone who mattered to him. "Tyler," Dad said, "you need to leave. All four of you need to leave." "But this is my home too," Tyler said. "Not anymore," Mom said quietly. "Not after what we've learned today." As Tyler, Marcus, Jake, and Brandon gathered their things and prepared to leave, Tyler turned back to me one final time. "Is there any chance you'd reconsider? I know I made mistakes, but I can change." I looked at him carefully, considering my response. "Tyler, change isn't something you do to get your job back," I said. "Change is something you do because you realize your behavior was wrong. When you're ready to change because you understand the pain you caused, rather than because you want something from me, then maybe we can have a conversation about rebuilding our relationship. But not about employment," I added. "That bridge is permanently burned." As they walked toward the front of the house, I heard Marcus mutter to Tyler, "I can't believe we've been working for your unemployed sister this whole time." Even in defeat, he still didn't understand the lesson. But Tyler had stopped walking. He turned around and faced our family one more time. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time, he sounded like he meant it. "I'm sorry to everyone who had to witness this, and I'm especially sorry to Danette. I was wrong, and I have a lot of thinking to do about the kind of person I've become." It wasn't enough to repair the damage he'd caused, but it was the first honest thing he'd said all day. After they left, the family sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Dad spoke up. "Danette, we owe you an enormous apology." "More than an apology," Mom added. "We owe you an explanation of how we created an environment where you felt you had to hide your success from the people who love you most." The conversation that followed lasted for hours with tears, explanations, and the beginning of real understanding between us. But that was just the start of the healing process. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of Meridian Digital Solutions, looking out at 46 employees during our quarterly company meeting. We'd grown by 4 team members since the summer, all carefully vetted, not just for their professional skills, but for their character and integrity. "Before we review this quarter's performance," I said, "I want to share something personal that many of you haven't heard." I told them the story of Tyler, Marcus, Jake, and Brandon, not to humiliate anyone, but to explain why our company culture prioritizes respect, kindness, and genuine teamwork above individual achievement. "We don't just hire people who can do the job," I explained. "We hire people who can do the job while treating their colleagues, clients, and community members with dignity." Janet, who had been Tyler's supervisor and was now our director of client relations, raised her hand. "Danette, can I add something to that?" I nodded and she stood to address the room. "When I first learned about Tyler's behavior, I felt partially responsible for not catching the warning signs earlier," she said. "But this experience taught me that a person's character outside of work inevitably affects their character at work. We can't separate professional integrity from personal integrity." The room murmured agreement. These weren't just my employees. They were people who shared my values and contributed to an environment where everyone felt valued and respected. After the meeting, I drove to my new apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom place downtown that reflected my actual success rather than hiding it. The walls were decorated with photos from company events awards we'd won and a framed copy of our first major contract. My relationship with my parents had healed gradually through months of family therapy. Dr. Sarah Martinez helped us understand how generational trauma about financial risk had created an environment where success felt dangerous and failure felt safe. Your parents weren't trying to limit you, Dr. Martinez had explained during one session. They were trying to protect you from what they perceived as the pain their family had experienced. But protection without understanding can become limitation. Mom and Dad now visited my apartment regularly, marveling at the life I'd built and apologizing repeatedly for their role in making me hide it. "We're proud of you," Dad had said last week, looking around at my home office with its dual monitors and professional video conference setup. "We're proud of your success, but we're more proud of the person you are." "You could have been bitter about our fear and ignorance," Mom had added. "Instead, you protected our feelings while building something amazing." Tyler's story had taken a more complicated path. After being fired from Meridian, he struggled to find employment. The embezzlement charges meant that most companies in the marketing industry were reluctant to hire him. He eventually found work at a local restaurant, starting as a busboy and gradually working his way up to server. The work was humbling in ways that his corporate job had never been. He had to learn genuine customer service, real teamwork, and the value of showing up consistently even when the work was physically demanding and the pay was modest. 3 months ago, Tyler had asked to meet me for coffee. "I don't want anything," he'd said immediately when I arrived. "No job, no money, no favors. I just wanted to tell you that I understand now what I did wrong." He looked different. Thinner, more tired, but somehow more genuine than I'd seen him since we were teenagers. "Working in food service taught me something I never learned in an office," he continued. "Every single person deserves basic respect, regardless of their job, their income, or their circumstances. I spent months mocking people's unemployment while serving tables for people who sometimes treated me the same way I treated you. The difference," he added, "is that you didn't deserve it, and neither did I. Nobody deserves to be made to feel small for their circumstances." We talked for 2 hours that day. Tyler had started attending counseling to understand why he'd felt the need to build himself up by tearing others down. He'd also begun volunteering at a job training center, helping other people develop professional skills without judgment or condescension. "I can't undo what I did," he'd said as we prepared to leave, "but I can make sure I never do it again, and maybe I can help other people avoid making the same mistakes." Marcus, Jake, and Brandon had each found their own paths forward with varying degrees of self-reflection and growth. Marcus had started his own customer service consulting business, using his experience with difficult clients to help other companies improve their support processes. Ironically, his encounter with angry customers had taught him empathy he'd previously lacked. Jake had returned to school to study graphic design more seriously, recognizing that his previous work hadn't met professional standards. He'd also reached out to apologize for his behavior at the barbecue, acknowledging that his comments were cruel and unnecessary. Brandon had taken a sales position with a smaller company, where his more modest performance was acceptable. He'd also started coaching youth basketball, finding satisfaction in building up young people rather than tearing down adults. But the most significant changes had happened within my family. Our extended family gatherings were now genuine celebrations rather than opportunities for comparison and judgment. Cousin Michael had started his own consulting business with encouragement from relatives who'd previously favored safe employment. Aunt Patricia had returned to school to pursue nursing, a dream she'd abandoned years earlier for financial security. The story of Tyler's downfall had spread through our family network, but not as gossip. Instead, it had become a cautionary tale about the difference between success and character, and the importance of supporting each other's dreams rather than limiting them through fear. Last month, our family had gathered again for Grandma Morrison's 87th birthday. As I watched my relatives laughing and celebrating together, I realized that Tyler's exposure had freed everyone from the pretense and fear that had constrained our relationships for years. Uncle Robert pulled me aside during that celebration. "Danette," he said, "what happened with Tyler was terrible, but it taught our whole family something important. Success without kindness is worthless, but kindness without honesty isn't sustainable either." He was right. The truth had been painful for everyone, but it had also created the foundation for genuine relationships based on reality rather than performance. At work, I'd implemented new policies that reflected what I'd learned from the experience. We now conducted character interviews, alongside skill assessments, asking candidates about how they treat service workers, handle stress, and respond to others' success or struggles. We'd also established an anonymous reporting system for employees to flag colleagues who exhibited bullying or discriminatory behavior. Technical skills can be taught, I'd explained to our HR team. Character flaws are much harder to fix, especially in adults who've practiced them for years. Most importantly, I'd learned to be honest about my own success and to encourage others to do the same. I'd started speaking at entrepreneurship conferences, sharing my story of building a business while hiding from family fears. The response had been overwhelming, with dozens of other entrepreneurs reaching out to share similar stories of hiding their success to avoid judgment or conflict. We need to normalize celebrating achievement, I'd said during one presentation. But we also need to normalize the fact that achievement without character is hollow. This evening, as I prepared for tomorrow's client meetings, I reflected on the 12 months that had passed since Tyler's intervention. That live-streamed humiliation had been the most painful moment of my adult life, but it had also been the catalyst for the most authentic relationships I'd ever had. My family now knew who I really was. My employees worked for a company that valued their humanity as much as their productivity. My community had learned that success comes in many forms, but respect should be universal. The $3 million hotel contract that Tyler had cost me with his intervention had been renegotiated and signed 2 months later. Patricia, the hotel CEO, had been impressed by my honesty about the family crisis and my commitment to maintaining professional standards despite personal challenges. Character is revealed under pressure, she'd said when we finally met in person. The fact that you prioritized your family relationships over a business deal, even when your family was treating you poorly, tells me everything I need to know about your integrity. As I turned off my office lights, I thought about the question I wanted to ask anyone who might be listening to this story. Have you ever found yourself hiding your success to avoid making others uncomfortable, or diminishing others to make yourself feel better? The truth is, both impulses come from the same fear that there isn't enough success, respect, or love to go around. But what I learned from Tyler's downfall and our family's healing is that genuine success multiplies when it's shared honestly, and authentic respect grows when it's given freely. If you've ever been in Tyler's position, using someone else's struggles to make yourself feel superior, I hope you'll consider the cost of that choice, not just to the person you're hurting, but to yourself. Cruelty diminishes the person who practices it, even when it feels powerful in the moment. And if you've ever been in my position, hiding your achievements to avoid conflict or judgment, I hope you'll find the courage to be honest about your success. The people who truly love you want to celebrate your wins, not minimize them. The most important lesson from this entire experience isn't about employment or family dynamics. It's about the choice we all face every day. We can build ourselves up by lifting others up, or we can tear ourselves down by tearing others down. Tyler chose the second path for months, and it cost him everything he thought he wanted. But when he finally chose the first path, he found something better: genuine self-respect and authentic relationships. That choice is available to all of us every single day. What happened in my family was extraordinary in its drama, but the underlying dynamics are remarkably common. Most of us have been both Tyler and Danette at different points in our lives. We've been cruel when we felt insecure, and we've hidden our light when we feared others' reactions. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness growth and the commitment to choose kindness even when it feels risky. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics, workplace challenges, or the courage to be authentic despite fear. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and speaking truth? How did you navigate that decision? Please take a moment to like this video if it moved, You subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing real challenges, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the power of truth and the importance of treating everyone with respect. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community that believes in the possibility of growth, healing, and genuine connection. Until next time, remember that your success is worth celebrating, your struggles are worth acknowledging, and every person you meet is worth treating with dignity. The best revenge against cruelty isn't more cruelty. It's choosing to be the kind of person who makes cruelty impossible through consistent kindness and unshakable integrity. Choose kindness, choose truth, choose the kind of success that makes everyone around you better.